right, we're live. We are live, coming to you from a hotel room in Boston. Tommy, Knox and I, who's diligently playing NBA 2K on his iPad over there right now. What'd you say?
Minecraft.
Okay, he's playing Minecraft. He wanted to correct me. He's playing Minecraft now. He's moved on from NBA 2K because I think the Heat gave him an L in his My Career mode. Yeah, Knox and I were at the game last night, man. Game 3 in the Garden. What an experience. I mean, it was lit. It was awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack with this game. I think we should probably start with Bam because he was just absolutely a killer last night. 31, 10, 6, 4 steals. Tommy, this is the most shots that he's taken in a game, in his career. And I thought what was interesting, the Heat came out with a plan and a strategy to feature him very early on. He was posting up Horford. I think he was 6 for 7 against Horford with Horford as the primary defender. They just for the whole game just did not have an answer for Bam. He was the best player on the floor, and that's including Jaylen Brown, who was had some amazing shots and played great, minus the turnovers.
So there's obviously no way that you or any of us could know this specifically because Spo and those guys are not going to say it publicly. But do you think that this was a adjustment that they made, or do you think that the plan was always like, we're going to unleash Bam later in the series?
I don't think that's the plan. To me, you've got to figure out a way to use players to their strengths. And I felt like, especially early in the game, and really for most of the game, but early in the game, Kyle Lowry set the tone with his throw-ahead passes. The Heat, for most of that first half, felt like we have an advantage when we are not going against Boston's set defense. Boston, on the other side, just kept going against the Heat set defense. And some of that was they weren't getting stops. But there was a lot of targeting on the Celtics side. We're going to go after Strus. We're going to play against him one-on-one as the primary defender, heater in boxes and elbows, where I think using Bam because of his side-to-side action and dribble handoffs, swinging the ball, getting into a second side pick and roll, it just kind of gave the Heat a flow offensively in the half court. And because of those throw-ahead passes, there was pace. There was pace. Yeah. There was pace. Like Lowry's stats were fine. I mean, he 4 for 11, 11.6 assists. But that pace on, then of course the steal there at the end were just 2 huge plays.
Could you tell that Jimmy was looking banged up being there?
No, I couldn't tell at all. Knox and I, he wanted some ice cream. An ice cream sundae at halftime. So we went back, got an ice cream sundae, and the Heat were going to shoot at our end. So when we came out for halftime, that's when I noticed that he was MIA. And my phone was dying, so I wanted to be able to get an Uber after the game. So I wasn't even on Twitter or anything. I couldn't even check my phone. I shut it off. So I didn't even know what was going on with Jimmy. And a little bit of I think some credit is due in a couple different ways in this game. We should give credit to the Boston Celtics for coming back and making that a really exciting game. I thought Al Horford was phenomenal. I thought Marcus Smart was phenomenal and showed some guts after that ankle sprain. I want to give some credit to the Boston Celtics fans because they simultaneously were booing and going crazy at every basket. Like they were so into it.
How crazy were they going the second Marcus walked back out?
Well, so they went nuts when Smart came out, and then they went nuts when Tatum came back out. But they really went crazy when Marcus came in and then hit that sidestep 3 from the left corner right in front of the Heat bench. That was probably as loud as the place got. Obviously, they cut it to 1 there in the 4th, but that was a cool moment.
It looked. I was watching with a couple of players, and they were like, his ankle's fucked. It looked on TV like he was like, not only was he not coming back, like he's probably done for a long time. And so to come back in and just literally do that is like next level.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of ankle sprains in my career, but there were times that I rolled my ankles and would roll an ankle and I would come back in the game. And you're running off adrenaline. Your pain tolerance is always higher when you're warm. I do wonder how Marcus's ankle is feeling this morning
today
when he gets up. That's something they'll have to just monitor. And he already was banged up from game one with the quad thing that he's been dealing with. So that's something to monitor. Obviously, the Jimmy situation is something to monitor. I said this at the beginning of the series, Tommy. To me, the biggest factor for the Celtics to win, be able to score in the half court against the Heat defense is Jayson Tatum's decision making. And at times in this playoffs, it's looked really excellent, really good. He's played at a really good pace. He's gotten off the ball when he needed to. He set up his teammates when he needed to. I didn't think his decision making was particularly great last night. Obviously, that's reflective in the 6 turnovers. Jaylen Brown as well with the 7 turnovers. There was a lot of just dribbling into multiple defenders with what I viewed, sitting courtside, what I viewed as no real plan, if that makes sense. The Heat, like the Celtics, you've got to move that defense side to side, and the Celtics just didn't do enough of that. And that's ultimately like 29 deflections for the Heat, 19 steals, 24 like the passing was just bad for the Celtics.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk for a little bit about when Jimmy goes out. Once you realize whether or not you know the specifics of it, that he's not coming back in the third quarter, and the Celtics get it under 10, and they keep making these runs, these sort of mini runs, and the Heat kind of keep them sort of at like puncher's distance. Vic was great defensively. They had a couple guys defensively sort of step up who had not played very much in the first half. But was there a point before the very end of the game where you thought they were, the floor was going to fall out underneath Miami? And then also, I guess my second question is, like, we've talked about this a ton on the show. It's really the reason why people would pick Miami if they would pick Miami to, win the series and potentially win the championship, is just this insane depth where you can pull these guys off the bench who haven't played and throw them into this environment and have them, just be this productive.
Yeah. The rotations are always shorter in the playoffs, and for some rotation players, game to game, series to series, that rope gets even shorter. Dedmon's not going to play his normal minutes. Pritchard, at times in certain games is not going to play a normal amount of minutes for the Celtics. But it wasn't really about the depth for me. It was just, it was like, this is what the Heat are. They have 7 or 8 guys. They're interchangeable. They play a certain way. They figure out game to game who's going to be the guy to help them get going. It's obviously a credit to Spo and the culture they built. But, you go down the line, besides Bam, and we mentioned Kyle, of course, but Max Strus had the big 3 from the right wing where they point switched, Jaylen Brown point switched, and then he tried to shoot the gap, and he just stopped and shot behind the screen. That put him up 4. That was probably the biggest play down the stretch, along with Kyle's steal for the Heat. PJ was great. Tatum took 3 shots against PJ. He was 0 for 3. He just did a great job against him. He's 3 for 9 in the series when PJ's the primary defender. PJ was great, had some big buckets, had that one-legged fall away at the end of the shot clock that he made. And you mentioned Vic. I thought, Vic was whatever he was, 1 for 4. He didn't have a huge offensive night. But just, again, all those guys, they're so disruptive. Kyle, Bam, PJ, Vic. And they try to target Strus, and you got to give them a lot of credit. They go after him on a lot of half-court possessions, and he does a great job of just battling. Like, I don't know that Max Strus is ever going to be a lockdown defender, but he's certainly, in my eyes, viewing the game last night, he's not a liability. He's tough, he's physical, he's big, he's got a little bounce to his game, and he hit big shots. So, I'm not surprised that they were able to keep the lead and win the game. They're better with Jimmy on the floor. That's obvious, but I'm not surprised by that at all. Again, it just goes back to we talk about the time, but it's like it's Spo, it's the Heat, it's a group, it's a team, and you got to give them a lot of credit for battling.
They're asking in the comments if you're coming back to Heat culture.
I never left Heat culture. Guys, my job on ESPN. I have to make picks. I've never made picks in my life. What the fuck do you want me to do?
It is
I'm not
hard.
gonna say, well, I got to watch 5 games before I make a pick. I got to wait till a team gets to 3 wins before I got to make a pick. No, I don't know what the adjustments are. What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
I think the Celtics have been the best basketball team, for a few months now. Like they're built for the playoffs. Like, what do you want me to say? I love the Heat. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't be biased. I can't be biased.
Do you if you are in the Celtics organization, if you're a Celtics fan, is there when you lose it? I mean, I know they were down big with Jimmy playing, but when you lose a game where you are making that's sick, by the way.
This was my Thursday action in Nashville, by the way. I realized I was wearing the shirt.
You have not changed.
No, I wore this on the train down yesterday, or train up yesterday, and I was like, it's freezing in this room because Knox slept till 9:40, dude. Like that's the latest he's ever slept. It was amazing.
That's amazing.
No, I look, man. I am going back to what I was just talking about. The picking things and like talking about players. It's not publicly. It's not like a natural thing as a player to do because you have so much respect. And this kind of leads us into the Mavs Warriors thing, where like I was posed with a question: who do you want with the ball in their hands in the clutch, Luka or Steph? Like Steph has obviously made a ton of clutch shots in his career. He's one of the best players ever.
Steph Curry.
He's Steph Curry. Obvious. Like people are like bringing up his shooting percentages from 2015. I'm like, great. I know. I played against him. I was fucking scared of him. He was a nightmare to chase around. I know. Yeah. It's not
dumb.
Like
it's a dumb thing to.
It's the format of television. Like we don't do that on the podcast. Like we give flowers and we try to give an honest assessment on this podcast. We give flowers more than anyone else. We acknowledge every star player. We acknowledge every role player. I don't want to fucking hear that shit. Come on.
You notice when we talk to players, we will talk about other players frequently, but we will never put them in a situation where they have to run somebody down because it's common sense. It's not nice. Who wants to do that?
It's not what we do, man. It's not what we do. I'm not out here to kill anybody. I want to give everybody their flowers. Everybody that knows me knows Steph is my favorite player and has been. I've never asked for anything from a player in my career besides 2 guys. Ray Allen was the guy I wanted to be as a player. My first time playing against him, I got him to give me a pair of shoes. And my last time playing the Warriors, I went up to Steph before the game and said, hey, man, this is my last time playing against you. I would really appreciate a signed jersey. Those are the only 2 guys. Like, Steph is my favorite player that I played against. He's my favorite player for my era. I'm not here to fucking kill Steph. I simply want size. I looked at this clutch numbers from 2021-22, and Luka was the clear favorite in that. I'm talking about right now, Luka. Bringing up Steph's clutch shots from 2013, don't do anything. Luka was 9 or whatever the fuck he was. Jesus.
But before we get to tonight, last question is: what adjustment do you think the Celtics are going to make for Game 4? Assuming Jimmy's playing. Assuming all is healthy.
Yeah, I would assume Jimmy's playing. The adjustment is simple. It's hard to do, but it just comes down to taking care of the ball. I mean, if they have 14 turnovers, they probably win that game last night. And give credit to the Heat for making it hard, for being in the gaps. They had some great rotations on the backside. There were multiple times where they got baseline drives. Celtics got baseline drives. Help defender came over to trap the box. They tried to swing it, and that X-Man guessed it perfectly. Like, yeah, I'm slamming pens. It's actually a pencil. They guessed it perfectly. Like, that X-Man was just always in the right position for the Heat. So I think you have to get the defense moving a little bit. The one thing I said earlier about the Heat when I was talking about just their movement and pace in the half court, the thing I noticed that they did in pick and rolls a lot with Bam. Vic set pick and rolls and got this done. PJ did it as well. They were slipping into that short roll area. So even on a switch, if you slip into the short roll area versus slipping all the way to the 3-point line, you're creating that Draymond Green-esque 4-on-3 on the backside. And Bam, of course, can make plays. PJ, I thought, had a couple nice plays out of that. I noticed what the Celtics were doing at times when they would bring Horford into it is he was popping to three. And I think that's fine against the Milwaukee Bucks. I think you've got to get more of Horford in that short roll area and involve him a little bit more in slipping action. That, I think, creates an advantage on that backside where you're not going against five guys staring at you. So that's one like X and O adjustment that I saw last night that I would make.
Is that a thing? He didn't play yesterday. Is that a thing that Robert Williams you think can do personnel wise, or is that really Horford's the guy that?
No, that's Robert is a backside lob threat. You know, he's a backside lob threat. He's in the dunker spot. He's not making plays out of that short roll. At least I haven't seen it. I mean, I've watched the Celtics a ton this year. I haven't seen that where I think we mentioned DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton, I think, has gotten better in that short roll area, being able to catch, score, shoot that little 14-footer. Or swing it to the opposite corner, and then all of a sudden there's a downhill effect to that. The Celtics need more of that. That's what they need more of against the Heat. And we have praised the Heat for almost 2 years now on this podcast. We have talked about Bam a ton. Let's wrap up Game 3 Celtics Heat by going back to Bam and reiterating what we always talk about on the show. Bam is so valuable in the playoffs because he can play any fucking coverage there is. And
everybody all the time.
Yeah, there's not five men that can then go on the other end. He averaged basically 20 and 10 this year. There's just not five men that are true five men that can do that on the offensive end and be able to play any coverage on defense. So his value, dude, you saw that last night. You understand why he's a max player, why he's been an all-star. It was just, I was very impressed. I was very impressed. Speaking of five men, let's give Kevon Looney some flowers here, Tommy.
I know.
Let's give him some flowers.
It's actually not crazy. He's done this before. People sleep on him.
Yeah. He obviously put up numbers. You know, he's not a traditional offensive threat. But he had a good offensive game. He's a great offensive rebounder and all that stuff. But, dude, this is a carryover from Game 1. His defense has been outstanding. 1 for 11 as the primary defender in Game 2. 9 possessions, 9 isolations versus Luka. 6 points the Mavs scored out of that. That's not good offense. And Luka was phenomenal in Game 2. Great bounce back after that poor second half. Kevon Chamberlain, I like that. I like that.
On the last one.
No, but I'm really impressed by his defense. And you know, the Mavs, we talk about this all the time with Luka. Like, Luka's going to control the offensive possession. He's going to manipulate. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to manipulate, and he's going to get the matchup that he wants. And so far, Kevon Looney has not been a good matchup, and they've tried to go at him at times, but that's not been a good matchup. They'll probably go away from that. The other guy is Steph. Great stat here. They use Steph's man as the on-ball screener 39 times in Game 2. That's the most in Steph's in the Steve Kerr era. Since Steve Kerr became head coach, that's the most in any game that Steph has been the primary the screener's defender. And then what does he do? Does he switch? Does he show? He showed about half the time in Game 2. They're probably going to keep doing that. I would look for that. The other really interesting stat about this game, and our guy Bob put this up on Twitter, with Draymond on the floor, and Draymond was in foul trouble. Yeah. Draymond on the floor, the Warriors offense scored about 1.18 points per possession, which is about league best average. With him off the floor, they scored 1.48. And as good as Draymond is offensively, because at times you can just sort of roam on him, you can be in a help position, you don't necessarily have to run out to contest his shots. That can create, and at 1.18, that's great. That's great offense. I just thought that disparity was really startling. They really were able to spread the floor. They really were able to create opportunities with him off the court. And that's not a knock on him, because he's, as he talked about on the podcast, he's so smart at being able to move the ball and move the defense and pick things apart. It's not a knock. I just found that stat really surprising. But, you know, what do you think? Because I'm curious if you're the Mavs and you've got Draymond in foul trouble, Luka goes for 40 plus, Jalen Brunson goes for 30 plus. You're up 19, you lose.
You think you win that game?
Yeah, I don't know. There's if you get blown out in game 2, I don't think you come back and you're like to Dallas and you're like, oh man, we're not going to win this series. When you lose in that fashion, it's a little. I've been in that situation as a player. We're like, oh, we actually did a lot of great things and we lost. Like that's a little bit discouraging.
Well, I was gonna ask you a version of this with this Heat Celtics series as well. I think that game 3 is discouraging. I think when you lose, when a guy like Jimmy isn't playing, that's discouraging. I know they're down, but I think when you lose, it's like when you feel like you have a chance to steal one and it's right there, and if, especially against a team like the Warriors, that you're not going to get a lot of those chances, and you feel like you let it sort of like fall through your fingers, it is discouraging. What I will say with this Mavs team, and I think a lot of us made this mistake probably last round, was they're a different team at home in the playoffs, or they have been at home so far. And I was going to ask you about, it feels like the Warriors have cleaned up a lot of their issues that they had in the Memphis series from just like a sloppiness standpoint and just like a just overall efficiency standpoint. Do you think that is going to continue? Because they've been on and off with that this year. It feels like that inconsistency has been the one question mark with them. It's like they're clearly have an insane amount of talent on this roster, especially with Poole playing the way that he is. But is there a world where you can see them kind of like falling back into some of their old, just like sloppiness and
because it comes and goes. It
like
comes and goes. They have quarters where they're just throwing the ball all over the place. There's a looseness that Steph has to play with, and so that there's a real, like, even early in the game, Draymond had a couple where somebody went backdoor and he's like he like has to make the pass and the ball went out of bounds. Like there's that's going to pop up. That's just it's part of the Warriors experience. It's part of the experience. Yeah. You mentioned the Mavs being down 2-0 and being better at home. Like the other thing we should also mention here is all the adjustments that Jason Kidd made after game 2 in the Phoenix series. So I do think this will end up being a series. I don't know that it'll go 6 or 7, but I think Dallas gets at least one at home. And we'll see what adjustments J Kidd makes, but I have a
question for you about playing against the Warriors specifically in the playoffs, because you've had to do it a few times.
I only did it once.
Well, only once, but you just know the feeling when they punch you in the mouth with these runs. No matter who it is, when they punch you in the mouth with these runs, does it feel unique, and does it feel like? But I guess what I'm curious is, like, now these guys have gone through this, does it make it easier when you know it's coming to sort of make adjustments and also almost kind of like handle it mentally once you've sort of seen it? Is it like hard to kind of understand what it feels like when you're in this until you actually have to experience it?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's the way that Steph plays, the way that he plays, and historically the way that Klay has played, and of course now with Jordan Poole, they throw haymakers. I mean, when they get going and they're running and Steph is on one, like those are haymakers. And I think the confidence you get from winning a game and having to withstand a couple of those runs and a couple of those haymakers, like the fourth quarter, they obviously didn't win the game, so I don't know if that's something to build on. But that fourth quarter, that was a haymaker. 43 points in the fourth quarter for the Warriors. They were insane. Even just the ability to get back in it halfway through the game when they're down 19, like that's a haymaker. And I think you get confidence from winning against that. I also think it's a different experience playing in San Francisco or playing in Oakland, and when they do that in front of the home crowd, it's certainly a different experience. The Warriors, they've always been a great third quarter team, so that's sort of the quarter to watch. If you're the Mavs tonight, it's like we're going to play well. We're gonna make it a game first half. Like you've got to come out in that second half knowing that Steph Curry has read all the Twitter comments to get himself going.
He's reading everything.
He's reading everything. All right.
It does feel like Luka. I mean, who knows what's gonna happen in the series, but it does feel like Luka is uniquely built to handle runs like that with the way that he plays and the pace that he plays at. He's not getting rattled by anything.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple comments like after that we released the Trae Young video where we were talking about the college crowds chanting "F you" to us, and a couple of comments were talking about, "Hey, you should come to a game in Europe and experience a really hostile crowd." Luka's lived through this. Luka's seen it all.
The grenades.
Yeah, he's wanted a high. Like he's unfazed by all of it. He's unfazed by all of it. I don't know about that, Reinor. I think that's mathematically impossible that we get Mavs in 4 here. But do appreciate you guys stopping by. Thanks for watching as always. And go check out the Trae Young interview if you haven't already. Appreciate you guys.